Okay, what if I told you that the very people who are shut out of power might be the only ones we can truly trust to keep it in check? Today, we're going to dive into a pretty radical idea about morality from a thinker who was so influential that Napoleon himself basically said, "Get her out of my country."
So let's just start with a question that gets right to the point. Think about it. Can you really judge a game, fairly, without any bias, if you've got skin in the game, if you're trying to win? This is the core idea we're going to unpack, all thanks to the brilliant mind of Germaine de Staël.
And boom, here's her observation. Writing back at the turn of the 19th century, Staël takes a look around and drops this bombshell. And you gotta understand, this wasn't just a complaint. Oh no, this was the launchpad for a really powerful, and pretty controversial, argument.
So, here's our game plan. We'll start with her big idea. Then we'll get to know the woman herself. After that, we'll dig into what she actually meant by disinterest, find out the one crucial thing her whole theory depended on, and then, finally, we'll ask, so what? What does this mean for us now?
So what was she getting at? Well, Stahl's big idea was that being an outsider, it's not a weakness. In fact, she flipped that completely on its head. She argued it was a unique source of moral strength, a special viewpoint that lets someone act as the conscience for the entire society.
Right, so who was this person who cooked up such a fascinating idea? We are talking about a true intellectual powerhouse, someone whose ideas were so potent, so challenging, that the most powerful man in Europe at the time, Napoleon Bonaparte, literally had her exiled from Paris. Germaine de Staël was an absolute force of nature. She was a best-selling novelist, a razor-sharp political theorist, and the host of one of the most important intellectual salons in Paris. She was a true heir to the Enlightenment, completely obsessed with ideas about freedom, progress, and the power of human reason.
You can see from her timeline, she was constantly producing really influential work. But I want you to focus on that one date right in the middle, 1803, exiled by Napoleon. This wasn't just some minor disagreement, Her voice was so powerful that the Emperor of France saw her as a direct political threat. Just think about that.
And this brings us right to the engine of her whole argument. What did she really mean by the power of disinterest? Now, it's not what you probably think. It's not about being bored or apathetic. Nope, it's something way, way more profound.
For Stahl, disinterestedness was basically a superpower of moral clarity. Think about it. Because women in her time were completely barred from political office, from military careers, from all the ladders of ambition that men were scrambling to climb, they didn't have a direct personal stake in the outcomes. They simply weren't playing the game for power or profit.
And this just lays out the contrast she saw so perfectly. On one side, you have the political world, right? It runs on ambition, on careers, on vested interests. But on the other side, you have the disinterested conscience. It's operating on a completely different level. It's driven by things like noble sentiments. It's free to call out corruption, to honor someone who does the right thing even when it costs them. It's kind of like the ultimate moral referee.
But, and believe me, this is a huge but, Stahl was not saying this moral clarity was some kind of automatic built-in feature. Nope. She believed the whole thing depended on one absolutely essential condition.
And this was the key. This special role as society's conscience wasn't a biological thing. It was a potential that could only be unlocked through education. As a true daughter of the Enlightenment, she believed women had to become enlightened. And that meant being taught right alongside men, with the same books, the same rigor, to fully sharpen their own powers of reason.
She saw it as this beautiful, positive chain reaction. It's simple, really. Step 1, educate men and women together. What happens next? Well, step 2, they form stronger bonds, relationships built on real mutual respect. And the ultimate result? A happier, smarter, more enlightened society for everyone.
Okay, so let's bring this all back to our world. It's a fascinating idea from over 200 years ago, but what can we actually take away from it today? This idea about power, morality, and the view from the outside.
So let's just boil it down to 3 key points. First, that having an outsider's perspective can give you a really powerful kind of moral clarity. Second, and this one is huge, Staël totally flipped the script on exclusion. She didn't see it as a weakness. She reframed it as a potential source of moral power. And third, none of this works without education. It's the essential ingredient to wake up a society's conscience.
And all of this leaves us with one final and kind of tough question.
Stahl's whole argument came from a world with really rigid lines between insiders and outsiders. But what about our world? We're all so interconnected. Almost everyone has some kind of stake, some ambition, some game they're playing. So where can we possibly find a truly disinterested conscience today? Something